Alex also want to say something else. So
But that
perhaps
probably-
a reaction to Carl. Reaction to Carl on some the other thing you wanted to say.
In my case, it was accidental that I happened to be an author who lives in Brussels and emerged around that time. It was a quirk of fate. But you're right, yes, it is interesting, especially about more people working with the language abroad than in the country, which you mentioned text, EU documents, where you look at them and say, what is this? And I translate some of those probably I wrote. And I absolutely agree with you. And I think maybe there's a good thing about that, but it's also very dangerous because language is being dissociated from the actual thing it's talking about, which worries me sometimes when I'm working.
We've got the tail, basically. I mean, we've got things at the front. Instead of perhaps potentially the translators and the writers abroad being a subset of Maltese, we end up speaking what they create or writing what they create.
Why do they create it?
Well, if you're translating a document about information technology,
Exactly. You have to. It's because the words are not there. Because presumably if they were there, you'd use them. So you've had to create them.
yeah.
So necessity is the mother of invention. I think.
But the people working with information technology in Malta
They use English.
are using, so,
The delegates who are in the meetings have their instructions in English.
yeah.
They have to do what in Maltese we say, ekutrumbaisa. They have to basically look at their instructions, translate them into Maltese so that somebody else can put it back in English.
But isn't that somewhat artificial?
Regarding what Carmen mentioned, now I think the idea of translocation is still a bit vague maybe, and it might be either pretext to classify new writers, or maybe it's a coincidence that we're all writing from Brussels, Luxembourg and elsewhere. Though there are other authors who haven't been mentioned that I would mention tomorrow, like Antoine Cassar, for example. And I mean, there are also writers who started writing in Malta, like Jose, and coincidentally he went to work in Brussels. So maybe that's a bit of an artificial distinction, which will eliminate, eventually. However, I guess it might be worth investigating this critical distance, which has been mentioned here and there, something which I felt in a way, and I guess maybe certain Maltese authors. I'm speaking most from the perspective of someone who studied Maltese academically, so maybe you feel a greater obligation in a way towards a certain type of literature, a certain type of idiom, a certain type of language, while then you've got people like Alex and then Jose, for example, and Carl, who are coming from outside of this coterie in a way. So maybe that distance served me and might serve others to get away from a certain sort of force which always pulls you towards a certain fossilized idiom, towards a certain center, So that distance even makes you write in a different way because you are away. However, it's also a very tenuous example or idea because, I mean, translocated or not, one can write the same things, and I guess for now maybe it's a question of pure coincidence, or maybe we still need to investigate this phenomenon that there's a new literature which is mostly emerging from people who are living abroad.
Or partly.
Or partly, and I haven't yet arrived at any conclusions, as I've said.
It would be interesting to see, like, my children. When you see, like in Australia, the new generations. When my children come of age, a new generation of Maltese who were born in Belgium. What will they do? I mean, my son knows Maltese, he can understand it, and he's interested in poems and all that stuff. So, if we were to start writing, what would he write about? Would he be a Maltese writer? that would be interesting to see how that pans out.
I know.
I mean, you touched on so many subjects, I would like to express opinion on all of them, but I have to be selective. On an issue which Carl mentioned earlier, it was in the first round where he,
No, just keep it closer to you.
okay, where he sort of challenged Alex and said, well, you know, consider writing in English because you write very good books, but you write in Maltese and maybe 1,000, 2,000 people would read them. I wouldn't like people who are working and translating documents when trying to crisis of identity, but I doubt, as a practicing diplomat, how many Maltese diplomats would read the Maltese text rather than, even if for no other reason, for practicality. You are discussing a working document around the table with people from other nationalities. It would be quite awkward quoting from a Maltese text when everyone is using an English text or a French text. So there, the influence, and maybe this can put your mind at rest, the influence that mistakes or developments which you might not like but are developing among that very specialized area of translation, I don't think it will go mainstream very quickly. So I wouldn't worry about it. But this brings me to the main point I would like to make. I come here more as a reader than as an author. And I've read Stream, I've read Tolo, and I've read a number of books, even Maltese. And my main concern sometimes is the extent to which, and this is primarily for people who write in Maltese, is, are you concerned with how the reader, now there are so many different types of reader, but how the reader would understand what you're writing? I mean, obviously someone who knows excellent Maltese but doesn't know English couldn't read script, but most Maltese would read the whole book and understand everything. But then, and this introduces something which Alina mentioned, the issue of an author, especially in a language like Maltese, trying to push the boundaries and creating new, not necessarily new words, but new ways of using words. And I think sometimes our authors lack or are behind what people are actually doing in the way they speak Maltese, which then is eventually reflected in written Maltese. And having had the experience of living for a number of years in many countries where there are Maltese communities, I could see this in action. I'll give one example which I've mentioned on other occasions. So people have heard it before, please excuse me. But I was present at a discussion between Maltese living in Australia and Maltese living in Malta. And the Maltese living in Australia had left a number of years ago and are not the internet generation, so they wouldn't follow Maltese television on the internet. And the Maltese from Malta used a word which is probably lost its original meaning. So if Alex today in front of this audience wants to speak about using public transport, he might say Arriva or Tallinna. He would not maybe normally say Sharab. Now in this context, these people, the Maltese from Malta, were describing people who were having an argument and talking over each other and the rest. And one told the other, it's like for Sharab. Now, the Maltese in Australia looked at that and say, when we went on public transport, we thought, I get why you're saying that. Now, the way language develops, and we're speaking on Sharab, which now for the purists is probably more French than I mean, you probably consider not Semitic enough or whatever. But this is the way the language develops now, and this is the main point. When you are writing in Maltese, is it limiting yourself of being concerned how the reader will understand what you're writing, or is it just a creative process? You are creating something which technically may even not publish or lock it in the drawer, and you've created it, and you can burn it onto a net and want to have read it. The moment of creation would have happened. It would put our friends from the Department of English and Maltese out of business, but that's maybe not necessarily that thing. So what would be I mean, it's fun being on a career break from being a diplomat. You can offend everyone.
You mean Sharab? Charabanc, the
Okay,
television
yeah.
program.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to close it here. We'll have a couple of reactions from the writers who would like to say a last word, because time is actually run out. But of course there's wine, and we can continue our conversations over wine. But one last word from those writers who would like to make just one last intervention, and then we'll just say thank you and see you downstairs.
Okay, so it's just a sentence about Belgium and the EU and Maltese language. It's thanks to the Maltese insisting on having Maltese at the EU that the Irish have got their Gaelic.
A quick answer about whether we consider readers. I personally do not. When I started to consider my readers after SRIP, it almost was my downfall, because I lost a sense of who I am as a writer.
Can I say something too? I think, answering your question, I don't write in Maltese, I write in English, but when a writer is writing, they don't think about the reader. You're in another world altogether. You don't think what the reader is going to say. You know, you don't think about the reader at all. You don't construct your work so that it pleases the reader or it annoys the reader. It comes out of you naturally, I suppose.
Like painting a picture.
Like painting a picture. It's a mystery.
No, I think in contrast to all of you, I write only for the reader, but I set the rules and I set my language. Maybe it's my journalistic upbringing that I think of the reader, but it's not when I'm creating something, like this is my alphabet, these are my rules. And they have to make sense, there has to be a logic within it. So in that context, Charabanc has to make sense or doesn't make sense, but not because I'm writing for a Maltese who watches Charabanc, but because within the context of what I'm writing, it makes sense. And we have numerous examples. I mean, Tolkien invented the whole world, and I think we do that all the time, not so dramatically, but as long as it makes sense within the frames, within the covers of the book, then that's your language.
I just want to encourage, if I may, us all to go on agonizing about language and never to think that we have too small a population. The area I wrote this about is 150 kilometers from my house. I have to make the round trip. I'm learning the Noongar language, which is one of the 500 tongues in Australia. There are probably far fewer people that are in this room who are fluent speakers of it. And in Whadjuk country, which is where I live, many words for very common things are different from in Binjarab country, which is where I write about. And they are in the throes of a convulsion, taking down the oral history before the old people die, checking it back with perhaps old films that were taken by anthropologists, arguing over every word, trying to get it back in the schools, because it has been proven without doubt that language is like your DNA thread to where you come from. And the people who had it taken away from them are really powerfully bringing it back. And